And we'll go over the homework in just a second as well. But the first thing that I want us to see is, are they all up? If you do this out, this was somebody's from last year. To start off with, you're given 2 minus root 11. You need to multiply by an ugly one. Does anyone remember the special name for this ugly one except for the C? There you go. The conjugate. You keep the left and right the same, change the sign in the middle. So we would multiply by an ugly one of 2 plus root 11 over 2 plus root 11. When you do that out, notice they did the foiling of the 2 binomials on the side. So you would get 2 plus root 11 in the numerator over 4 minus 11, which is negative 7. Now that in and of itself is not a choice. But I hate leaving a negative in the denominator anyway, so they put it outside and find something that's equivalent to it. Questions on that one? Same process. What ugly one did we use for the second question? Should be 3 plus root 2 over 3 plus root 2. And when you do that again, you just distribute out in the numerator. It leaves you 21 plus 7 root 2 all over. Now again, you do the multiplication over in the margin. 3 plus root 2 and 3 minus root 2. First terms give me 9. Outside and inside are going to reduce out 3 root 2 and negative 3 root 2. And then the last terms are going to give you negative root 2 times positive root 2 is a negative 2. 9 minus 2 is going to give you 7. If you're looking at that going, well, why isn't that an answer? Who can tell me why? 21 plus that, yeah? There you go. Everything that's there is divisible by 7. So you'd be left with 3 plus root 2. Questions on that one? You start getting really redundant. Bounce down. Take a look at a different one. Yeah. Take a look at question. And these, again, we should be very, very good at these. I went back and found out that allegedly you did simplifying radicals last year. I know that you should have done it because it ties in squares and square roots come from the geometric shape called a square. When you know its area, you're trying to find its sides or vice versa. Looking at what we have, who can tell me the perfect square that goes into 12? What perfect square number goes into 12? Let's see, we need 8 people. Seriously, 3, 4 of you? 4 times what? So we get to this part here, and there's already a 4 in front. What about the biggest perfect square that goes into 48 times? So when I go through and take these square roots, I go through and have this becomes a 2 here and a 4 here. And what do you do between the 4 and the 2? Multiply them together. So we get to that step. Do we have like radicals? There you go. So let's put them together. And we would have 20 root 3. Down here for the next ones, you need to know your perfect, that's more square roots. This one down here was perfect cubes. What perfect cube goes into 24? Hands up, please, if you can tell me what perfect cube goes into 24. 8. And what about the perfect cube that goes into 375? You have to be able to generate that list. And if you're really doing your homework and embracing the concept, you should by now know 2 to the third is going to give you 8. 3 to the third is going to give you how much? 27. 4 to the third is? 64. 5 to the third is 125. 6 to the third is, and we know? I thought it was 216. It's 216. Now, you'd have to go back, though, and check those out. In any case, you can always generate it from the calculator. And hopefully today's going to be a day that we go through and we do our work. And all of these things that I gripe about, everything's going to start coming together and tying in nicely today. Today I don't even envision being that. I don't want to say it's overly challenging. We do some stuff that are extensions. Yeah?
Did they all multiple choice? Because,
yeah.
Oh, I didn't see them. So
That's all right. Hang on. Do me a favor then? Is it, find it in there. Yeah. Can you fill those in on the side? Yeah. But again, I can assure you this, the one thing that I need all of you to know is, and actually it was kind of funny, somebody from at the end of your next class, we sat down and we did there's a little bit of a group time at the end, and they go, God, this is now easy. And see, what you don't understand is the reason, it's like sort of running a race. You can make it so you do the uphill part of the race at the end, or you do the uphill part at the beginning. In my opinion, where do you think it's easier to do the uphill part? The beginning. I'd much rather, because everyone's going, well, I struggled with the factoring. I know that. The whole reason we did the factoring in the beginning is because I found out that you didn't do nearly what you were supposed to be doing last year. And then I cringe every time I heard it today when I was walking down the hall from 1 year ago. All right, let's do test corrections. I sat there and a little bit of my soul started to die. You're going to have, you don't have test corrections. Every day you have an assessment. You'll have hundreds of them. I think at the end of the year we get up to assessment number 174. Fingers crossed. Maybe if we're lucky, we'll push ourselves and get to 200. Maybe. But I'll have so many measures of what you know and what you're good at. And the thing that's funny is you get better as time goes along. And you get faster at them. But you don't get intimidated by multiple choice, all of that stuff. You had homework from the other day, too. I'll ask this. Did I give you guys this last time we had class or no? No. Okay. Here is, have out your homework from last time. These are the answers. I had somebody ask about 46, and I think it might have been 51 before, but if we wanted to see, that was from the other sections the other day. So I know first and second block asked about, first and third asked about 46, so we can do 46. And it's fascinating because there's more than one way to do it. I did it one way, and somebody goes, well, can I do it this way? And they found a path with less steps that gets you to the same answer. And they're absolutely right. Go through right now, check to see if there's questions on a couple of them. We got some time. We can give you about 5 or 6 minutes to go over it, check your answers to see what's up there. And remind me, by the way, at the end, because I'll give you the answers to tonight's homework so you can take a picture of it before you leave today, so you know if you're working on the right track. Are there any that we'd like to see? Yeah?
46.
Yeah. Is 51 the same type of question as 46?
It wasn't on the thing.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
46 was the 51.
Okay. Oh, you didn't?
It stopped at 47.
Okay. All right. All right, then let's do this. I'm going to bounce over, please, to look at question 46. And you're going to see, and I'll tell you this, you have to take those first couple steps, because that step is the awkward part. But you might end up finding something that gets a little bit easy. So let's look over, I think second page. Here we go, 46. Now I look at 46 right off the bat, and I see 2 square roots. If I put them together under one root, would any reductions happen? If I house the numerator over the denominator, would any reductions happen? Does this simplify down? I love this. We can't answer this question. 5x to the 4th all over 2x squared, y cubed. Do any reductions happen here? No, there absolutely is. The x's, yeah. So now I'm left with this. So I've got square root of 5, 2. This y is going to be still stuck in the denominator. But what happens with the x's? What are you left with? X squared, where? Numerator. All right, so I did that. And now the next thing I want to do is I'm stuck here. No more reductions can be done. And at this point, by the way, well, I'm going to split it back up. But this was my way of doing it. I'll show you how the other kids did it, and it might have been a little bit easier. So we get 2y to the 3rd. That took care of an x squared that was in the denominator. I want a perfect square in the denominator. Who can tell me what I need to multiply by so I get a perfect square down in the denominator? I need this to be something that I can take the square root of. What do I need to multiply the fraction by such that there is a perfect square in that denominator? We've got no takers? Oh, come on. What's the smallest perfect square that 2 and y to the 3rd will go into? You could do 4y to the 6th, but there is a smaller one. 4y to the 4th, because 2 isn't a perfect square. So I'm going to multiply this by something that will cause a perfect square in the denominator. So that would be a 2 and a y. Now watch what happens. As we go across in the numerator, there's no coefficients, there's 1s there. What do I get when I multiply my radicands? 5 times 2 is 10. Then I've got x squared y. All over down below, I'd have the square root of 4y to the 4th. What can you take the square root of or simplify out that's there right now? Hands up, please. What can we take the square root of? Yeah. And what's down below? I would have a 2y squared. And actually, I look at the numerator and I can simplify that. Does anybody see what we can do to simplify the numerator there? Really? Square root of x squared. What's the square root of x squared? Now, this is one way of getting to the answer. Somebody in the first section did this. They said, all right, I look at the numerator and the denominator. I look at the numerator right away and I can simplify. Who can tell me what you can simplify if you were to simplify out the square root that's in the numerator? Hands up, please, if you can tell me what you'd be left with after simplifying out the square root of the numerator. This is wholly unacceptable if you cannot do this. You are not by any means close to where you need to be. If you can't look at the numerator and say, yeah, I can break that down immediately. 2 people? Really? What? Yeah, you can take the square root of x to the 4th. We did that all day last class. That's not new. How many times does 2 go into 4? Twice. So this would be x squared, and the radical 5, that's still underneath it. Look at the denominator. And they went through and said, well, I want to simplify this out. I can simplify it, though, before I start. What can you simplify out in that square root to begin with? We've got 1, 2. What do you want to say? Good. So what is it going to be when you simplify it out all the way? You're right. You can take the square root of x squared and break up the y to the 3rd as y squared times y. So what would you have?
Y radical 2x. Or 2y.
Now, once you get here, there's a problem. And an unintended benefit. Look at those coefficients. Is there a reduction that I can do now? Hands up, please. Can you tell me what reduction we can do? Look at that fraction. 2 people? Come on. What do you want to say? No. I'm looking at the coefficients, not the radicands. Look at those coefficients. Yeah, we don't, and this is another thing that they do a bad job on. Things don't cancel, they reduce. Because when you say cancel, you imagine it goes to nothing. Reductions go to 1. So you're left with, there's an x in the numerator and denominator I can do here. Now I look at this and say, so I simplified out with the x's. The other thing is, though, I still have a square root of 2y. What's the smallest perfect square that 2y will multiply into? Who can tell me, please, the smallest perfect square that 2y will multiply into? 3 people? What's the smallest perfect square? 3 people. What? 4y squared. Because that's the smallest number that you can take the square root of that 2 goes into and y goes into. So I need a 4y squared in the denominator. What do I need to multiply it by so I get a 4y squared? A 2y. So I'm going to multiply this by root 2y over root 2y. And in the numerator, I have an x out front, so I would say this is equal to x. What do I get when I take root 5 times root 2y? Root 10y, terrific. And what about down in the denominator? I have a y times root 2y. Technically, if you need to see this or write this step out, this is what I have, 4y to the 4th. What's the square root of 4y to the 4th?
1 to the 2nd.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. What did I just screw up? What a dummy.
It'd be 1 to the 2nd.
y to the second over here, because it's y times y, so that would give me y squared. What do I get when I take this square root? 2y times the y that's out front, so that would make this. Did we both get to the same answer? Sure. They got to it in 2 steps. I got to it in about 5. But there's more than one way to go through and do it. Right? Now, what we're going to have you do is this. Let's have our note packets out, and let's go over, please, to day 2-3. Let's have your notes out and open to day 2-3. What we talked about before is going to be this. If the index is even, the square root is the principal or positive value. Here's what we're talking about. The square root of 16 is equal to 4. The negative of the square root of 16 is equal to negative 4. If you are given the square root, you assume the positive or principal root. When do you get a plus or minus? If I have x squared equals 16, then x would be equal to plus or minus 4. This would have 2 answers, since it's squared. That's the piece that you need to remember. Now, understand that the stuff we're doing today is there's a bunch of algebra in it. And there's really one question that's tough. There's one that looks really tough, but it's actually really, really easy. And there's some mid-range stuff. And there's one, again, algebra error that your algebra 1 teachers has probably let you apparently get away with. So, do we have this down? All right, let's bounce over, please, to the next page. If I tasked us with solving this, the big thing is the first step is going to be, and if you want to go through and write this on the side for the procedure part, feel free to. What is our first step going to be in solving this out? You can tell me. What do you want to try first? Your problem solving hat on. What would you want to do to get to the x? 2 people? 3 of you? 4? 5? Let's isolate our radical. So if you want to write that out as step 1, isolate your radical. We're going to subtract 2 from both sides. So that leaves me with the square root of the quantity 2x plus 1 is now equal to 3. Our first step is always to isolate or get the radical alone. So if you want to write that in the margin, feel free. John, what do you do to remove the radical? There you go. The opposite of a square root is to, or the opposite operation of taking a square root is to square both sides. That's going to leave me with just the radicand of 2x plus 1 is equal to 9 now. From here, this goes on autopilot. These are what you solved last year. You've got 2x is now equal to 8, which means x is equal to 4. Has everyone gone through and signed into their calculators? If you haven't, go through and do it right now, because we're going to do something on the calculator. Wonderful. Tammy, I'll add you at the end. Okay? Now, make sure everyone's gone through and signed into your calculators. What we're going to have you do is this. Go to your home screen and get a new document. And from there, what I'm going to ask you to do is type in the original equation. So you would do the square root of the quantity 2x plus 1, and then get out of that, and then plus whatever was plus 2 equals 5. Now the equals button is on the side. All right, now, once you get to that point, we'll give you a second. Once you input that, the next thing that you all are going to do is this, and apparently this is new for you. Hit Control and then equals. And there's going to be an option for a bar. See that vertical line? You're going to select that. Now you're going to put in x equals, what answer did we go? Was it 3 or 4? 4. 4. All right, do x equals 4 and press enter. Does that answer work? Yes. What? You can if you want to. This way to do it is very easy though. Now, what we're going to tell you all is this. This is why guess and check doesn't get you any points in here. literally I could sit here like, like a trained dog and go, is it 1? No. Is it 2? No. Is it 3? No. Is it 4? And eventually we get tired of doing it. Now, this lets you know, though, whether the answer you got is true. If there's no justifying algebra, it's not going to get your point. Understand this. On your Regents exam, is that a viable option? Sure. I'm going to tell you, you're going to check every single answer on that Algebra 2 exam that you can by plugging in and seeing if it's true. By the way, go back up, and the way to re-get this is up twice while it's highlighted and hit enter. Let's change the answer to like a 5. Does 5 work? No. So that's how on a multiple choicer you can narrow it down. If there's no algebra, though, on your assessment tomorrow, don't bother. Let's take a look now at the next one, and it says alternate procedure. There isn't one. Now, these are the ones where it's going to be getting a little bit awkward, and you have to draw on the knowledge that you had from before. Take a look at the first one. Our first step is going to be to do what? Hands up, please, if you can tell me, for number 3. Perfect. What would you do to make that happen? Outstanding. Outstanding. Subtract 1 on both sides. Now, this is where some of us with algebra apprehensions, it's going to show up. The algorithm is the same. We isolated the radical. What's my next step going to be once I have that alone? Square both sides. So I'm going to square both sides. Now, this is the part where I get frustrated. You need to go through and be able to tell me what the quantity x minus 1 being squared is going to be. If you need to list it out in the margin, go right ahead. But I need you to write out the quantity x minus 1 times the quantity x minus 1, first order and last, and tell me what the product of that, those two binomials multiplied together, are going to be. We'll wait for 8 of you that can tell me. We got 3 so far. That's fabulous. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of us. Are they going to know? Ben, what do you say? Let us know what you get when you get it.
X squared minus 2x plus 1.
Perfect. All of a sudden, this is when you should almost be going into autopilot. What type of equation is this? Hands up, please, if you can tell me. There's triggers that you've got to see. What type of equation? We got one person? Come on. Come on. Yeah? Perfect. How'd you know it was quadratic? There's an x squared in it. When you see a quad equation forming, you need to think everything gets set equal to 0, and then I'm going to try to factor it. Set the factors equal to 0, which for some reason they let you get away with it, Spry, which is algebraically incorrect. And then from there, we're going to get answers. So I'm going to want to keep my squared term positive, so I'll make these guys do the walking. When I do that now, this is going to be equal to 0. What am I left with on the left? Tommy, what would you have? Oh, you've got negative 2x minus x. What's that? Minus 3x. Now, there is no GCF here. It's not a difference of perfect squares. It's not a sum or difference of perfect cubes. Once you get to this point, you should say to yourself, are there numbers that multiply to negative 10 and add to negative 3? And if the answer is yes, what two binomials will this factor down to? So hands up, please, if you can tell me the two binomials that trinomial will factor to. We'll wait for 9 of us. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. What do you want to say?
X minus 5, x plus 2.
That's outstanding. The quantity x minus 5 and the quantity x, what was the other one?
Plus 2.
Plus 2. Now, when we do this out, for some reason, I don't know why, some of you go right into the answer from here? The other people were saying that you go right to the answer. That's wholly not the case. What it's called is the zero product property, meaning if you multiply anything times 0, the answer is 0. So we need to figure out what causes this to equal 0 or what causes this to equal 0. So we'd write out x minus 5 equals 0 and x plus 2 equals 0. You're okay to be a mental math all-star here. We get answers of 5 and negative 2. Now, here's another one. And this, to me, was painful. Who here has heard you always reject the negative? Some of you? Okay. I'll tell you right now, when I find out who that person is, they need to be very careful walking down the stairs and spry. I'd be very, very nervous. I will be lurking behind corners. I'm meaner than the rounding fairy, if there is such a thing. That is completely, wholly, and 100% incorrect. I'm going to be giving you questions where both answers are negative. One will work and one won't. I'll give you questions where one's negative and one's positive, and the positive won't work and the negative will. I can make anything happen that I want to. And I love to put it on tests that the answers both come out to be negative and you keep both of them. Or there's something there, so you can't just automatically reject something. People of lesser intellect will have been the ones that told you that. Go back up to the original. You're going to do the same thing we did before. Input the question, then do the bar, x equals. Tell me if both of those answers are true or false. Remember, you only need to input it once, because once it's in there, you can go back up, highlight, and modify for the second answer. Careful. Whomever this is, you got to do an x equals after the bar. Press enter. Does the 5 work? Now let's go back up. Just hang on. You don't need to enter the whole thing again. You can just go back up and highlight what was there before. What was the second answer that we got? Okay, so does the -2 work? No. So in this case, it's false. Now we're going to throw another big word at you. Does anyone know the name for the, you write reject underneath it. Does anyone know the name for what you get from the algebra but then have to reject? What's that? No? Omit's like what you do if you don't want to do it. This, again, when we talk about you guys having age-appropriate language, I'm going to give you a great big word right now that makes you sound really smart. Extraneous solution. Extraneous solution. Meaning the algebra dictates we get 2 answers. And why are we having 2 answers here when we only had 1 to the original? Because look at what you've got. We squared during this. See how once you get an x squared, that means you're going to be getting at least 2 answers. So always check your answers. You can, on a multiple choice on the Reg in June, when you're taking the exam, you would do that on every question. You do the algebra and check to see if it works. Take a look now. This one's going to be awkward and there's a lot of steps in it. You're just going to have to get over that. Taking a look at what's there, there's 2 radicals here. And they're not equal to each other. There's a constant there as well. So what I ask you to do is pick the more difficult radical and get it alone, or the bigger radical and get it alone. The bigger radical, I would say, is this one here. So in order to get that alone, I'm going to subtract a root x from this. Again, the process is, it's daunting, I guess, if you haven't done it before. Once you do one of them, you go, oh, that's kind of easy. By the way, if there's 2 radicals in it, how many times do you think you're going to have to square stuff in the process? That's it. Nope. We'll see. When we go over here now, I've got the square root of the quantity x plus 5 equals 5 minus radical x. What do you think you want to do from here? Sabrina, what would you guess?
Get rid of the radical.
And by doing what?
Squaring.
Terrific. And all of a sudden you're going to realize one of these halves is going to be terrifically simple and the other one is going to blow up and get gigantic. And we're okay with it. What am I left with on the left-hand side? Megan B., what would you say? Okay, so we're left with an x plus 5 here. Now over on the right-hand side, that's going to get really, really messy. So I'm going to go over and I'm going to say, all right, I need to take 5 minus root x and 5 minus root x. Oh, that crazy old lady keeps telling me I need to FOIL it, so let's go through and do it. Amalia, what do you get when you multiply the first terms together? What do you get when you multiply the outside terms together? Negative. And what about the inside terms? Can you finish it off? It's negative root x, and negative root x is going to give you
No,
positive root x squared, which would just be an x. Because root x times root x would give you just the x, because it's square root of x squared. Now, can this be simplified down? Sure. Those can come together, so now I've got 25 minus 10 root x plus x. Well, my same process as before applies. I still have a radical equation that I need to solve, so I need to isolate the radical. Hands up, please, if you can tell me what I would have to do in order to isolate my second radical. One person, two of you. Oh, come on. What would I do to isolate my second radical? Riley, what would you say? Subtract an x. And what else do I want to move? All of a sudden, this is going to get a lot easier. This is wiped away. This is wiped away. I've got negative 10 root x over here. What am I left with on the left-hand side? Tommy? No. Left side. Be careful. Who can tell me? Just a negative 20. These guys are wiped out also. Boy, all of a sudden this got really, really easy. Thomas, what would you do from here?
You would square the radical in the left-hand side.
Now, that is, who sees it differently? Let's start off with that. If you see it differently, you will get the same answer. Watch what we're going to do. We're going to do exactly what he said, because he's not going to be wrong. It's a little bit more complicated, but not wrong. What's negative 20 squared going to give you? 400. Now, what is negative 10 squared going to give you? 100 times. What would you do from here? Divide by 100, and you would get an answer of? Before I circle it, I go through, who, by the way, went right here and divided both sides by negative 10. Are you going to get the same answer? Aren't the numbers a little bit easier? But does that mean that he's wrong? No. Taking a look at what's there, before I circle it, I'm going to go back up, do that bar trick in your calculator, confirm that the answer works. Does it? Looks like it to me. So once I know it works, the way that I've designated that I've checked the answer is to put a box around it. Questions on that one? Let's try another one. Let's bounce over, please, to question number 5. 5 is just a little bit different, but you can't be a quitter on it. It's good. This is probably the toughest one we do all day. Who can tell me what you want to do to start off question 5? You got one person, two. Mickey, what do you want to say? That's terrific. I'm going to subtract an x from both sides. So when I do that now, I have the cube root of the quantity x squared plus 2x is equal to 2x. Who can tell me what we want to do from here? And yes, I'll yell at you if you say the wrong thing. Who can tell me what we want to do from here? Perfect. Not square it, cube it, because you need to get rid of a cube root. Now, we're going to have some of us who fall asleep at the wheel just a little bit when we're doing this. The left side is going to be hopefully easy. You've got x squared plus 2x is going to be equal to, what would I have on the right-hand side? There's going to be a lot of us who screw this up.
8 plus x to the third.
Close. You said one thing wrong in there. 2 to the third is 8, and x to the third is x cubed, not plus. All right. How many answers is this question going to have? 3. I need to set it equal to 0. Watch what happens. I'm going to keep the largest term positive, so that'll stay there. I'm going to subtract an x squared and a 2x. So now I'm left with this equation. And this is why we did all of that work in the beginning. It's not quadratic, but boy, it looks like it, and we can make it quadratic, but what do you see that you can do to factor that down? I've got one person who sees it, 2, 3, Riley? I'm going to factor out, take a GCF of x out, okay? So once I get to here, all of these terms have an x in common, so I've got x times 8x cubed, 8x squared, what a dummy. Minus x and minus 2. Now, this is the part where I told you this was the toughest question, and it is by a mile. How many answers am I going to get? 3. I'm going to now set all of my factors to be equal to 0. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop this over here and write out this one here. This is my first factor, x is equal to 0. Now, this right here, normally I would say we're going to try to factor this down. Right? And it would be 8x squared minus x minus 2 is equal to 0. Here's the way to check to see if this will factor down before you go through and actually do it. What do I get when I take the product of the outside values? Hands up, please, if you can tell me what the product of these outside values is going to be. What would that outside product be? Just the coefficients, I'm sorry. So just negative 16. Are there numbers that multiply to negative 16 and add to negative 1? Yes or no? Are there numbers that multiply to negative 16 and add to negative 1? No. So, hopefully maybe some of you know this. Does anyone recall what you do when the quadratic equation won't factor but you still need to solve? Rhymes with quadratic formula. There you go. You need to know the quadratic formula. Now, I'll write it out for you. You are responsible for knowing it. It's given to you. From what I understand, some people gave like a hymnal or something that they use. Okay. X is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of the quantity b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. If that's not on your paper, get it down now. You do need, because you do need to remember what it is, and I don't want you to not have the tools necessary to be successful. If you want, I think you're too young though to get it tattooed on yourself. I'll say this: I had a friend that was a warden at Auburn State Correctional Facility, and he goes, you know, there's some really tough dudes that are there. And he goes, there was one guy, and you see guys with, you know, flaming skull tattoos all over them, stuff like that. And he goes, you know which one was the craziest of the crazy? He's like, I mean nuts, and nobody messed with this guy. He had x equals negative b plus or minus on his neck. And that takes us, that is a whole different level of watch out. I'd be afraid of somebody with skull and crossbones all over them. I would run if I saw somebody who got some sort of math formula tattooed on themselves. To me, that just says, it says, look out. That's a general license. So if you happen to run across, if this guy gets out in 20 to 30 years, you see him walking down the street, just run. Like go the exact opposite direction, I don't care where you are. And that goes for anything. If you see somebody with a giant neck tattoo that says x equals negative b plus or minus. Now, when we do this out, I don't ask that you show the formula. And some of you show me too much garbage when you do this because you have people showing you this that go through and they don't know what they're doing. You need to show me 3 numbers, that's it. I don't care where they come from. You can go to the calculator. What's going in it? What is the A value for this question? Hands up, please, if you can tell me what our A value is. 8. What's our B value going to be? Hands up, please, if you can tell me that. Careful. Negative 1. What's our C value? Negative 2. Who can tell me what this yellow value is going to be then? Hands up, please, and you can tell me what number is going in that yellow position. Yeah. 1. What's going in the blue position? Hands up, please, if you can tell me that. Seriously? What? 16, 2 times the A value. Now you're going to find the green value, which is called the discriminant. Go to your calculators to do it. Take the B value in parentheses. So I type in negative 1 in parentheses. Get out of the parentheses. Squared minus 4 times A times C. And who can tell me what number value that's going to have? Hands up, please, when you can tell me the number value that's going in the discriminant. We got a bunch of murmurs like ghosts. Terrific. No perfect squares go into 65. This is one answer. How many answers did we just state then? 2, because there's a plus and a minus. Go into your calculators, and if you plugged each of these in, you would get that it comes out to work. Those 3 answers do work. The reason we're rushing is because I want to make sure we get through this next one. This one looks so difficult, and it's so easy. This is going to take us hopefully 30 seconds to get through. What's your first step going to be in number 6? It looks really awkward. There's 3 radicals there. We'll call you a Wanda. What do you want to see? What's that? Square it. So I'm going to go through and square both sides. All right, that gets rid of the outside radical, so I've got 1 plus the square root of 2 plus the square root of x is equal to 9. What's my next step going to be? Hands up, please. We got one person. Careful. You told us our first step, isn't it, to isolate the radical?
Oh, subtract the 1.
Subtract the 1, yeah, so now I've got the square root of 2 plus square root of x equals 8. Now I'll go through and square it, and that's going to leave me with 2 plus root x is equal to 64. From here I would subtract a 2 from both sides, and I get radical x is equal to 62. What do you do from here? Square it again. So I get x is equal to, what does this come out to be? 3844. Terrific. Now, your homework tonight is on there. I'm going to tell you this. I'll do this for you, and it'll hopefully, do you want your answers for your homework for tomorrow? All right, what day was this? 2-3, is that right?
Yeah.
So here are the answers to your homework. If you want to take your phone out and take a picture of them when this loads up. Sometimes it's quick, sometimes it's not.
Put it on my Google Classroom.
I don't think so, because I can't figure out how to, well, take a picture. If you need it, I can send one to you. I'll try to find a way to send it out to remind. If there's extra questions on there, please forgive me. Do your best. Make sure your calculators go in the right spot. Have a terrific day, loves. By the end of the day tomorrow, hopefully Sunday morning or Saturday morning. Yeah. Ready? I hit it on it. 3. And it's right, there's 3 answers. Here's one of them here. And because remember how we had this and this? Right? When we factored it down, we set your factors of it equal to 0. So I factored this down. There's only a GCF. I set your GCF equal to 0. And then this, when I set this equal to 0 and solve it, how many answers are going to give me? 2. So we got how many answers here? How many answers here? How many total? Make sense or no? Okay. Yep. Okay. Hang on. Is it this one? Okay, take it. Bring it back when you're done. On Monday. Okay?
Question for you.
Hang on 1 second. Yes. That's right.
I did it, and like
This is square root homework or no? This is 2-3, this is 2-4, I'm going to go to 2-3. You said number 11? Okay. Well, we did it at the beginning of class today, right? 2-2, which one? 11? Okay. What's the biggest perfect cube that goes into 81? Okay.
So I got that one. And then, we answered that. Oh, this one.
Which one is that? 25. Make sure it comes back after this period.
I will.
Okay, what ugly one would you use?
Using
Over. So, when I multiply this out, I'm going to handle both sets of this separately. So I have to take 5 plus root 3 and 2 plus root 3. Let's FOIL those. First terms will give me 10. The outside terms give me. Inside terms give me. Last terms give me. So that's going to go up top. Now I need to do the denominator, which would be 2 plus root 3 times. Okay? First terms, outside terms, inside terms, and if I get it back by the end of the period.
We added boiler names to us. Okay, thank
You
you.
don't need to write your name down. You're good. Is Anthony in your class?
Yeah.
Make sure that both of you bring him back.
Okay.
Okay?
Can I pass my phone home?
Yeah.
It's in.
I had to have something small surgery on my foot yesterday, and I figured I'd be a hero and then come back in.
How's that working?
Seeing your smiling faces makes it all worthwhile.
Thank you. Did a lot of people fail?